creating curiosity by asking better questions. This is Shed Talk. Angela Chuy, making changes with entrepreneurship is what she's all about. Wow, Angela Chuy, thank you very much for coming to Shed Talk. I am so excited to have you here.
I'm equally excited, Kevin.
Oh,
I always love chatting with you.
I know it's amazing because we've known each other for how many years? 10, 15?
Yes, about 15 years. Actually, closer to 20. It's been closer to 20. We met each other through a mutual friend at one of my stores.
And what store is that?
2023, I met Kevin Halliday through Kevin Franco at Wonton King.
I know, isn't that the greatest restaurant ever?
I'd like to believe that we make a kick-ass bowl of war wonton, yeah.
And you think about Wonton King, okay? You think about this place, okay? And I go back 20 years ago and you look at this. Anybody would ever talk about a restaurant like that, like the Wonton. That's the only one that would ever come to mind. Like, talk about brand recognition, putting yourself out there to be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, let me share that it really is. Like, there are no other direct competitors that actually do that one thing really, really well. And that was our focus, was when you do something, do it really, like, just knock it out of the park. That's your craft, and go deep. And that's what we did. So all the elements that make it really, really good, such as handmade, authentic recipes from 30, 40 years ago, just do it right and do it from scratch. People can taste the difference.
So when you talk about, okay, quality, price, and service, okay, you just mentioned that basically because you have 30 years of this. But the real underlining thing is when you really think about it, and my guests and people that I talk to, you're female.
Yeah.
Okay. You're in an industry, male dominant. And I remember talking to you before, and you'd mentioned to me, you know what, I want a job that only basically from this hour to this hour. So you were able to dictate this as a woman and a female in a male environment as a successful entrepreneur.
Thank you.
How challenging has that been from then to now?
Yeah, I've reflected on that a number of times, and I just want to back up our timeline here. Challenges are opportunities. And when I think back to it, there have been some pretty pivotal moments in my life. There have been three pivotal moments in my life. And I'm just going to take you back to when I was 14. And the thing that really resonated one day when I was reading this book, which everyone knows, Viktor Frankl, is about the last human freedom, that everything can be taken away from us, but not the last human freedom. The freedom to choose your attitude in any set of circumstance. The freedom to choose your own way, because life is always for the future. So that is the underlying pivot point when I was 14. I'm like, oh, wow, like there was this internal locus of control that just, I can do it. I can do it because I can choose my way and I can choose my attitude. And so a series of things happened when I was 14 and then kind of launched me in a different trajectory. And 14 years later, I left a male dominant industry, banking. So I was in commercial banking with a great company, HSBC. Cut my teeth there, learned the ropes, and really appreciated all the offerings of a circumstance where, as I said, it's definitely male dominated in an oil and gas industry, and all the things that, we call challenges. But you need to understand that when you're in a game, there are rules of engagement. Understand them, and then blend them, or break them, or challenge them, or go build your own shed. Go build your own sandbox. So that's what I did when I was 28, and I took all those opportunities and learnings from HSBC, and I moved it into Wonton King, built a company that first of all, nod and acknowledge that I bought a family business that was successful, and I replicated the success through things that really made sense, like process and people. And so through the challenges of opportunities, of stripping away all the things that didn't make sense, I saw that there were opportunities for females like me who were blended into society, and we were told that you got to operate within this, and you got to have a family, and still find a means to develop financial security. And you know what, Kevin, Wonton King was a portal to create a platform for women to have financial independence and to work in an environment where they feel and well they're entrenched in a family outside of their family. And really the operational hours have to be such that, so I'm going back to your original point, the operating hours have to be at a point where they can drop their kids off at school and pick them up. And the best part of it is that they're at home for dinner. So that's the elements. Those are the key elements of Wonton King.
So, okay, so the key elements of Wonton King. Let's get down a little bit deeper here because
Sure.
as I'm going to go back into that one thing about being a female.
Yeah.
You're 14 years old and you see exactly how you're going to change. When did it become, because young kids and young people where they are today back to where, so my age going back, you don't know you're in jail until you break out. Okay. So all of a sudden you're 14 years old and all these young people they want to do this, they want to do this, but you had a clear vision to be able to change. Now, being a woman,
Yes.
okay, being in a minority,
Yes.
when did you recognize and how did you recognize that females at that point didn't have the power? And I'm going to go down a little bit deeper down that rabbit hole because, again, it's the things you know that you don't know.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't know they're in jail until they break out.
Sure.
When did it became that one moment in time that you realized and went, oh my gosh, the wow factor, that aha moment. Wait
Yeah.
a second, there's more to this as a woman.
Right. And it wasn't just as a woman, actually. I know that that is what you're asking. I want to add to that that there were other barriers to entry. So, financial. At 14, I come from humble beginnings. My father and mother provided a really incredible foundation for us. But we came from humble beginnings when we moved here from Canada, or to Canada from Central America. And so finances were a challenge, and being a minority was a challenge. So I moved into a WASPy, as you would call it,
What do you call it? What's a
white
WASPy?
Anglo-Saxon Protestant type neighborhood. I was one of 1 in 50. That was when I went into that school. 1 in 50. So only Asian, only person of color.
And how are you
And
treated?
well, I was told that, I had to call my mom in the office at lunch one day, and the secretary said, "We don't do that here. We don't speak whatever you're speaking." So discrimination is a very real thing.
And especially back then, when we look at, yes, back then,
Yes.
and the correlation from then, because you have kids,
Yes.
and then I have kids, and we look at it from back then, and the kids always say to us, and we say to them, I went uphill both ways, up
Right.
the mountain, down the mountain. It's
Yeah.
been the same.
Yeah.
But is it the same from then to now? From the excuses, and not excuses, the storytelling that your family now tells you, can you relate? Is there been a big difference? Because
There is a shift. Calgary has become more multicultural and diverse, and it's wonderful to see that this city is embracing multiculturalism. And if we go back to that neighborhood today, I bet you if we opened up the classroom, probably be 50% multicultural, and it's wonderful. It is wonderful. Just in the late 70s, early 80s, it was Canada was beginning to embrace immigration. And anyways, but getting back to the point was not just being female, but being a minority, coming from a financially challenged background. And so effectively in grade 9, I decided that I wanted to not go to the feeder high school that this school was feeding me into. I wanted to go to Calgary's preeminent private school. And wait a second, there are a few things that are in the way, such as what I just told you. And we couldn't really afford it, but my dad made it happen. But I also had the audacity, I'm going to say audacity, to say, I belong in that school because I really believe that education is something that's going to afford me many opportunities in the future. So I plucked myself from a circumstance where most people would just go with the flow and go into that feeder school. And I said, no, I actually want to go across the river and I want to see what that looks like. I want to look at life from that perspective. I want to learn, see, feel, hear. And that was my 14-year-old pivot when I really internalized that saying and I did something. So it was, yeah, without making it a whole really long story, it was the foundation that laid that internal locus of control.
So as you're getting older,
Yeah.
you have this family business, Wonton King.
Yeah.
Now you're getting ready to and being with the banking industry before and getting your teeth, as you say, getting your teeth, not teeth
Cut your
red, but
teeth, cut my teeth, yeah.
cutting your teeth. To make that transition to take over and run a business,
Yeah.
here we are again,
Yeah.
that male
It
dominance,
is.
okay,
Yeah.
in business, having to come up with a new way of doing business and looking at it. How challenging was that? Like as an entrepreneur, female, okay, Asian,
Yes.
and to take
Yes.
over that.
Right. There were some challenges, absolutely. I really honor my family, my father and my mother, and they did really fantastic in creating a restaurant in the 80s and into the early 90s that was really well loved by Calgarians, King's Restaurant. And it brings a smile to people's faces, and people have stories, and they keep recounting, 3, 4 decades later, and it's lovely. But the challenge therein lays a shadow, also a prescription where my dad would say, yeah, this is how we do things. And this is how it's done in the past, and this is how you're going to do it in the future. And that's just intergenerational download from his father, who my father and his father set up a successful clothing business, and that's how grandfather did it. That's how father did it. That's how he followed suit. And so there is just this. Well, I've been there. I've experienced life, and I know what it is to set up a business, and this is how you're going to follow suit. I don't take anything away from that. There are a lot of principles that I learned, but things change and times change, and and there are principles that stay true, and then there are new principles that we need to blend to make something that was valid 50, 60 years ago valid today. So that's what I did in the early 2000s, and it was really challenging to respectfully come up against cultural norms of just not questioning and keeping quiet and just following suit. And I didn't. Therein lays the challenge.
And how'd you break that?
Well, I
Well, this becomes a storytelling.
yeah, yeah, uncomfortable conversations, loud conversations, where two meetings of the mind come together, and just saying, well, what fundamentally to what it comes down to is respect of the other person's beliefs. The values are still there. We want to see a successful business. So now I'm going back to, say, my father, and I did have a business partner as well who had a minority share, and he was male as well. So the interesting thing is that the belief system is how you get to that point, how you get to the end point. So the values were the same. Do well and apply those funds to the family and just to make impact. But the belief is that they wanted to follow suit. So I did have to digress from what they did, and we really did. So in growing the business,
What do you mean by digress?
digress. So there were processes that I changed in order to scale. So Wonton King was one restaurant which we scaled into 5. I sold one, unfortunately lost a couple during COVID, but during the way we also built, a manufacturing company as well. And so I digressed from the original, everything was done one way to making it literally was changing the processes, and even that was fighting uphill with my father because he wanted it done the way it was done, in the late 70s. So, but I think more importantly, the fact is that hiring was a really important thing, and I felt like, you know, how do I put this? Women work collaboratively. Women work together as a community. And we're really, really good at understanding what the other person wants and sharing our perspective and coming together
Is
in a
this an
middle field.
interpretation or an actual
No,
feeling? Okay.
this is an actual thing that, yes, generally women actually are more as a collective and collaborate. So one of my focuses was to hire women and women that are of the same mindset where your success is my success. Your issues, how can I help? And so that I wanted to indoctrinate that sense of community into the company. Now, I came up against the challenge was, well, they wanted to hire men. They wanted to hire certain individuals that didn't align with how I felt we needed to move the company. So, how did we do it? It was loud, Kevin. It was loud. It was uncomfortable. And, at the end of the day, when also the end result is there is profitability, when there is scalability, when there is real measured success where clients come in the door because you have that consistency and you can see teams working together and the numbers all add up at the end of the day, well, that speaks for itself.
But does it speak for itself in a way? So I'm going to go into this a little bit more as say, take your dad as an example. He's a business partner in there with you, right? And you're there. If he
He
wasn't
had
your,
retired. That's the interesting thing is that when I created Wonton King, he had retired. So that was part of it. Sorry for the pun, but two cooks in a kitchen, two chefs in a kitchen doesn't work.
no,
So
and that's
I entered and he exited.
where I was looking at because I'm asking it as if I as an entrepreneur and I look at that and I have a business partner that's going in there, and so I want to hire this, you want to hire this. Okay, we're clashing. Now, as family, the dynamics of a family structure, because when we look at family businesses out there, what is it? 98% actually don't succeed.
Yeah,
For generational wealth, so on and so on.
right.
So it becomes very, very difficult to do. Where you basically as an entrepreneur having to do that cultural shift
Yeah.
and to basically embed your ideals in there. Like, how did that go?
All right. So now we are 20 some odd years in the making. So Wonton King, our first store opened in 2022. We're now in 2024, so we're 22 years later. And so the biggest challenge was in the first 5 years was when we were breaking down constructs of this is how it's done and all the things that I talked about earlier, to a point where he just said, okay, well, you know what? If I'm seeing the value set, if I'm seeing these measurable results, then he let go a little bit, right? And he let go. So what's been really wonderful is that and I'm going to bring EO into this too, just like learning a lot of working smarter, not just working harder. And so you start applying a lot of these business principles and when the results are seen and measured, and then from my intrinsic standpoint, the things that aren't measured and seeing my collective team work collaboratively and just seeing that the fact these women are mothers first and they're also team members and family members within our company as well, equally as important. So it's not first, but it's not second either. So when I start seeing the intangibles and the tangibles come together, and my dad was able to see that, there's just a breath of just, okay, all right, let's just let this go on and see how it organically grows. So here we are today.
So the question there, I want to get down a little more about that and ask that one question. So you say women, okay, and then you've hired these women into your organization because they're family, they're growing, because you're all like-minded. Could a male actually be like-minded as well?
Yes, male can be like-minded.
And I'm talking about like an entrepreneur. So I have a business here. Yes, I think this way. They think this way. And that's not that I use they or
Yeah, yeah.
as in you'll have more success. I'm assuming because of that structure that you had set up versus me setting that structure up.
If I'm understanding you correctly,
Right?
me setting it up in this way, do I have a different result than if Kevin did the exact same thing and Kevin is Kevin?
Correct. And that's where I'm looking at because I'm visualizing this as knowing you and seeing how you do that in the culture that you're building, the 9 to 3, where I look at it as a different perspective. I'm not saying one's better or worse than the other, one's
Yeah.
profitable, more profitable than the other.
Yes. Uh-huh.
The direction that you've taken is outstanding, which opens the door, that truly opens the door for great women to grow.
Yeah.
Versus the other way, it's more the old boys, okay, we need to do this, whatever that storytelling I'm going to have on that side.
Yeah.
So the empowerment of women, how do you take that to the next level?
They've taken it to the next level. And you talk about growth. It's not just growth financially, but they have kids that know their parents. I think that's the thing that we're not celebrating and should be sharing more of is that's the next level. Is that the ripple effect is these women have actually, so some of these women are, at the time, they were what we call temporary foreign workers, and we created an opportunity for them to become permanent residences in Canada. And as a result, they brought their families over. So that's some significant growth, right? Because we're creating opportunities for not just one woman, but for her family members. And when their families come over here, they're working certain hours within these hours, and they're actually able to spend time with the families, their husbands and their children. For the individuals that are not from overseas, but are also women, they literally can have a set of friends and husband and all that kind of community, which is really important, which actually is super important to me to have a community. And they were actually able to invest that time into it. Yeah, it is interesting to have this conversation because there is a concept that economy dominates, that in order for something to scale and grow and be successful, it has to be measured by economy. It has to be measured by the number of stores, what your revenue is, what your margins are, and how many more channels can you get into. All that is based on dollars and cents. And what I'm challenging is, what about the ecology of relationships? What about the ecology of connections? You can't mark that, you can't put that down on a balance sheet and a profit and loss statement. But tell me, why are you happy? Why are your kids happy? Why do we measure success the way we do in dollars and cents when we know that we're trying to chase the dollar to have a better life, but shouldn't it be the other way around? And I really feel like we need to tip things over, and we are. There's been a movement too, tipping, and basically flipping things around and looking at as the ecology of it all, and then the dollars and cents will come into play. Does
Interesting.
that make sense?
Totally makes sense because we're chasing the mighty dollar to give us freedom, but at the same time, you look at that. We live in a great country. We're the 1% of the top of the thing, but let's ask ourselves this question to dig deeper into curiosity: is to say, if you don't have money,
Yeah,
you do not have freedom,
yeah.
and
You have other freedoms,
yeah, but
but
with zero,
you
like
have
homeless, like when we look at the homeless or someone that doesn't have money, they can't do that. You can't
sure.
travel. We can't do that. So it's more like you're already locked in. Unless you have money, you don't have freedom. So it's kind of making sure that everybody has that freedom of choice as you're working in environments that we build. I see where you're coming with that.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. We absolutely have to have a baseline of financial security. That is important. I'm not discounting that at all.
Right. Now, let's go back.
Yeah.
So now that you just took over Wonton King, you're female. Okay. And I'm
Okay,
gonna
we're
go,
going
I'm
back.
gonna
We're
go,
going
I'm really
back to
going, I'm,
2002. Yeah,
but not
let's
even
talk about that.
2002, but I'm thinking back because I want to fast forward to today.
Yeah.
Is that when you were back there, how many entrepreneurial women were actually owning their own business then to now, fast forward, how many women do you know today that own their own businesses today?
That is a wonderful question. Statistically, if I look at the organization that you and I both belong to, Entrepreneurs Organization, back then, I want to say that we were at about a 6% to 7% of female members to male members. And it's not necessarily just because it was a boys' club, but then there were also other impacting factors. Today, when we look at our global membership, I believe we're at, I mean, I don't want to celebrate it because I feel we can do better. We should be at 50. We're not. We're at about 16 or 17%. And that's a growth. So now we're talking 20 years later, we've increased that by 3 times, but we need to get it to a much higher percentage. And I truly believe that we will because, and by the way, something to celebrate is Calgary has about a 25% female to male, which is only going to grow because of the strength in numbers and also the diversity and the open mindset that we have in the city. So I'm celebrating that. So how is it? Do I feel like today we are in a, what was your question? Was that, do I feel like
So
things have shifted? Is it easier for women? It's not easier for women. It's not easier for men, but it's not easy. It is possible. We are asking the right questions. We are challenging the former doctrines and we are doing.
well, what's really interesting that we talk about that. So back in the day, did you know any women? Okay, not statistically wise. Did you know a woman that was an entrepreneur, a friend, family, foe? Did you know one?
No,
Okay.
I did not.
Today, how many do you know today?
A plethora. I know, but I choose to surround myself with also women that challenge the doctrines, and they always ask why. So I'm surrounded by women that are curious and do something about it and own their own businesses and take their future into their own hands.
And you can really tell the difference between entrepreneurial women, just like entrepreneurial men. They have that sense to them that not to fail, we're going to go to the next level, whatever that means. So family's very important, okay, on both sides. But there's also a little hidden story here that I don't think a lot of people really talk about. And it's interesting, is one of the stories I was watching a movie the other day. And I believe the movie was Ferrari. And it was such a funny movie, meaning the fact is, he said, I'm not going to give anything up on the movie, but it was interesting because the guy, the Ferrari, the main character in there, and he owns Ferrari. But the underlining story behind it, I don't know if a lot of people look at this, is that his wife was so powerful in the fact that she controlled the money, she controlled the business. He was the front man, and how he would downplay about, am I really going to tell at the bank that I got to talk to my partner who is the wife? And out there as entrepreneurs, how soon we all forget that our spouse, as male, has a wife that is just as powerful as we are, and they look after the kids, they nurture, they make this, but become that powerhouse that the untold story is never there. But yet, we still don't celebrate women as entrepreneurs, but a man behind a great successful man is always a great woman. That's
Absolutely.
probably better than he is.
You can just drop the mic now.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I sound so
Exactly.
really good there.
No.
Yeah.
And okay, so let's just back that up for a second. So entrepreneurship, okay, yes, but I just want to take that word and just place a different meaning to it. An entrepreneur is an individual, male or female, that wants to challenge structural norms. Like they're like, well, I think I can find a better way. And I feel like if I take all these elements together, I can create something that is greater than the parts. So the sum is just incredible. And so by definition, an entrepreneur is someone that's willing to take a risk, and they believe that this will be the outcome. So to your point, all these men with spouses behind them, I would suggest that the males are entrepreneurs and they are partnered with equally incredible entrepreneurs. So you've got this partnership of entrepreneurs in the family. It's just that there are front people, meaning the men, who are out there and
But it could be the other way too. So,
yeah, of course. But I'm just saying that Really, yes, you're right. You nailed it, Kevin. You nailed it. That the spirit of entrepreneurship is also in the home. It's also outside of the home. It's in whatever environment male or female choose to be in and collaborate. What I want to take this point further and go deeper is that we've got to put this into context and value that those elements of entrepreneurship that aren't seen on paper, that aren't seen, selling cars, and it's not seen because you can't touch it, see it. And that other entrepreneur behind the scene is so important to the whole equation. So how do we do that, Kevin? I think this is the real discussion that many more of us should be having. How do we place a direct value on the things that we cannot see, but have such impact on the things that we can touch? How do you put that in? And I'm actually going through that question very personally right now, where there is so much intelligence and skill and experience that one brings to the table that it cannot be discounted as insignificant, because you can't put that down into dollars and cents. So how do we do that?
You know what? I think that's going to be another question we're going to ask about curiosity.
Yeah.
Do you know what, Angela? Thank you very much for being on Shed Talk. We're going to continue this discussion another time.
I look forward to it, Kevin.
Thank you very
so
much for coming on board.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you.
Always.
Now you know. Shed Talk